In a shocking twist, nobody could have predicted just a few days before the release of 11.1.7, which will include the addition of the overcharged delves, this new extra feature of the patch where you go inside these delves. There will be some extra mechanics, some extra mobs, and as you complete the overcharged delves and you have gotten through the early parts of the quest to obtain your durable information securing container, also known as your D.I.S.C Belt, clearing 9 different overcharged delves throughout the cycle of delves that will be available in their overcharged version will allow you to unlock all of the 9 different power-ups you can select for your belt. And in a shocking twist, as we said, these power-ups have been buffed. We did have a video already about these delves and about the release of this belt coming in 11.1.7, also pointing out how pretty weak this belt looked like and was initially, also compared to the ring. The main difference between this belt and the Circe's circlet you're currently using, or some of you are still currently using, is the fact that even if you didn't like the special, unique, niche effects you might have put on your ring, you could have still defaulted for the ring to be a big stat stick. Just put a bunch of secondaries on your ring and equip it and use it as a normal ring giving you stats. Whereas for this belt you didn't really have the option, because this belt didn't have any power up which straight up gave you a whole bunch of secondaries. It was basically just a selection of procs. You could have gotten your mastery proc, your crit proc, your haste proc, or your verse proc. Otherwise you had to go for some special effects. What was the disappointing thing about this? Well, technically speaking, it was that every one of these effects, no matter what, was a shit. We were talking about most of these effects were going to be a 0.3, 0.4, 0.5% damage increase, for example. Which is a problem because this belt would have gotten all the way up to 694 item level. So it was barely a few 0 points of percentages better than a current 684 item level belt, which meant that practically as soon as you entered Season 3 and as soon as you got some 700 plus item level belt, it would have been replacing the power of this belt, unlike the Circe's circlet, which lasted well into basically your heroic rings in this season. So that was pretty much the main disappointing feature of this belt, the fact that even if the idea itself is pretty cool, you get your quests to do some things in your delves, you get a whole new talent system to get you to speed blitz through the delves even faster. The overcharged feature adds some variety and some new things in the delves themselves, and once you have unlocked them all, you can swap between these power in your belts, but then it doesn't feel nearly as good because these powers are all kind of weak. Like, we were sort of disappointed in the helmet enchants, the runes you can get from the horrific visions, because those were a 1 to 2% damage increase at best, and this one is even weaker than the helmet enchant, so of course it wasn't a very good look. Now, of course, just a few days before the reset and before the release of this patch, Blizzard did send in a bunch of buffs for this belt. First of all, now the base item level will be higher and the max item level will go up to 701 item levels, so the amount of weekly upgrades you will have to loot from the weekly quest to upgrade the item level of the belt remains the same, because it starts at a 7 higher item level and it's gonna end at a 7 higher item level at 701 item level, and then a bunch of the effects have all been buffed. Now, back before all of these changes, the strongest one was the static charge, which was the proc effect giving you verse, which is similar to the Moxie Jug, the Maxi Moxie Jug trinket. When you proc this, you gain a little bit of verse, but then the more spells you cast, the more verse you gain for 30 seconds. This was the one that could get to almost like 1% damage increase. However, this one isn't even the one that gets buffed, because it actually loses the scaling with haste. It does have a faster ICD, so it can proc more often, but it doesn't scale with haste anymore. What gets buffed way more, which is now the default choice for your belt option, is the charged bolts. which unfortunately it's also the most passive and the most uninteresting of the effects. It's very simply a random proc which damages a random enemy every 3 seconds for 15 seconds. That's literally it. So with this effect being buffed by the small amount of 141% more damage, now most of the sims for most specs are showing this effect being between 2 to 3% damage increase. So with this effect being within the 2 to 3% damage increase range, it means pretty much that now you are safe to use this belt well into the next tier and well into you getting a heroic belt in the next season. This should still be on par and slightly above a default heroic belt in season 3. However, this will change in AoE because this damage increase is strictly single target, because of course the effect itself, the effect that now sims the highest and the one that was buffed the most, is a purely single target effect. Charged bolts does single target damage to one enemy, so it won't really have that big of an impact in AoE. Even after this effect has been buffed, the AoE power of this effect was very low anyways, so in AoE we are still looking at a barely 1% damage increase for most specs anyways. Also, on a side note, things are not even that much better when it comes to healers, because the effect that was buffed by a lot was just the damaging effect, was just this charged bolt random proc effect. Pretty much the only ones the healer could have used were the stat procs, so either crit, verse, mastery or haste, or the straight up the healing proc. However, the healing proc was already pretty weak to begin with, and it was only buffed by 15%. Same goes for the shield proc effect, only buffed by 15% while already being pretty weak. So in short, even after this round of buffs on this Friday, the power up is mostly visible in single target. You will mostly keep this deep into season 3 when you are fighting single target bosses most of the time. It will likely be more easily replaceable when it comes to mythic class. When it comes to turbo AoE and fighting multiple mobs, there aren't really nearly as many powerful effects in here for them to hold up against, for example, a heroic, a hero track tier belt next season, and this gets even weaker when it comes to healing, because there aren't nearly as many powerful effects or powerful buffed effects for healers in these possible choices for you on your belt. At the very least, we can say that the one thing this latest round of changes did was pretty much confirm that at the very least you want to bother to go through the whole quest line event to, open up your belt, receive your belt from the NPC, and start going to the overcharged delves to unlock these power-ups. We can still be disappointed nevertheless about the power level of this belt anyway, because even, as mentioned, after these round of buffs, we are still in the realm of the 1 to 3 at the very best % damage increase, and an even lower increase when it comes to healing. So we have this one coming out in just a few days. Of course, this is Friday, the one selected day for Blizzard to announce any changes. The other day is gonna be Monday to Tuesday, right before the actual reset day, so maybe there is another round of changes coming in just a couple of days, but for now this is what was decided last minute for the powering up of this belt, which up to this point was quite disappointing, and it was going to follow the level of disappointment, actually no, an even higher level of disappointment of the helmet enchants, the rune enchants you could have gotten from the horrific visions, since this one was even weaker than those effects, and even with these buffs it's barely slightly above and just in single target. Still weaker in AoE and still weaker in healing compared to your helmet enchants. So for today, on this Friday, this was the update for the upcoming 11.1.7 feature of your durable information securing container belt you will be able to loot in a few days. So for today, though, we can now leave each other on this Friday. We can start the goodbyes, of course, by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who's been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, we are sitting with 36 degrees of heat, and it's not too good, to be fair. It's not even summer right now.